The impossible mission. The stars were cold witnesses to humanity's darkest hour. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiant, her fingers tracing the holographic display that showed humanity's remaining territory. A mere handful of systems at the edge of what had once been a thriving interstellar republic. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of their mission. Commander Thomas Chen looked up from his console, fatigue etching lines around his eyes. "All systems nominal, Captain. Quantum drives at 98% efficiency. Weapons primed. Stealth systems engage." The Defiant wasn't just any warship. It represented the culmination of desperate human innovation. A vessel built in secret using technology reversed engineered from the very enemies who had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. The Krell Empire had appeared 3 years ago, their massive armada sweeping through human space with ruthless efficiency. Earth had fallen within months, its defense fleet obliterated, its surface rendered uninhabitable by Krell bombardment. Navigation. Voss addressed the young lieutenant at the helm. "ETA to the Cassiopeia Nexus." Lieutenant Sophia Rice checked her calculations. 7 hours, Captain. "We'll emerge near the outer boundary of the system, well outside conventional detection range." Voss nodded. Cassiopeia Nexus wasn't chosen randomly. Intelligence gathered from resistance cells indicated that Admiral Xor Thul, the architect of Earth's destruction, had gathered the Empire's primary battle fleet there, over 200 warships preparing for the final push into humanity's remaining territories. And against this armada stood the Defiant. One ship, one desperate gamble. "Communications officer, any transmissions from command?" Voss asked. Lieutenant Kai Jung shook his head. "Nothing, Captain. As expected, we're on our own once we cross the Orion line." Voss wasn't surprised. This mission wasn't officially sanctioned. The provisional human government, operating from the colony world of New Terra, had rejected the plan as suicidal. But Admiral Hernandez, the last surviving fleet commander, had seen the potential in Dr. Isabella Monroe's experimental weapons system. "Captain," Chen said quietly, approaching her command chair. "The crew should be briefed. They know we're heading into Krell territory, but they don't know the full scope." Voss considered this. The 300 souls aboard the Defiant had been handpicked, the best pilots, engineers, and tactical officers humanity had left. They deserved to know what they were facing. "Ship-wide," she instructed Zhang. The communications officer nodded, opening the channel. "You're live, Captain." Voss stood straighter, her athletic frame tense beneath her uniform. "This is Captain Voss speaking. By now, you've all noticed we've crossed beyond the protection of our remaining defense systems. I can now share our destination and mission parameters." Throughout the ship, crew members paused their duties to listen. "We are bound for Cassiopeia Nexus, the gathering point for the Krell Empire's main battle fleet. Intelligence confirms that Admiral Xor Thul has assembled over 200 vessels there, preparing for what they intend to be humanity's final defeat." A murmur spread through the decks. In engineering, Chief Nakamura exchanged glances with his team. In medical, Dr. Winters stopped preparing medical supplies, her hands frozen in midair. "Our mission is simple, though not easy. The Defiant carries prototype weapon systems designed by Dr. Monroe, systems that target specific vulnerabilities in Krell technology. We will deploy these systems against Xor Thul's fleet." Voss paused, letting the implications sink in. "I won't lie to you. This mission was deemed too risky by the provisional government. We operate without official sanction. The odds against us are extreme. But the alternative is the extinction of our species." The silence throughout the ship was profound. "Each of you was selected because you represent the best of humanity. Your skills, your courage, your determination. If any crew can accomplish this impossible task, it's you. Remember what we fight for, not just our own survival, but the memory of Earth and the billions lost to Krell aggression." She took a breath. "We have 7 hours until we reach our destination." Department heads, Review battle stations and emergency protocols with your teams. That is all. As the transmission ended, Voss turned to find Chen watching her. "Good speech," he said, "but you left out the part where we're almost certainly not coming back." "They know, Thomas," she replied softly. "They've always known." In the hours that followed, the Defiant moved silently through the void, its revolutionary quantum drives leaving no subspace wake for Krell sensors to detect. The crew prepared methodically, each person focusing on their tasks rather than contemplating the odds against them. In her private quarters, Voss reviewed the schematics for the Monroe device one final time. The weapon utilized quantum entanglement to target the unique energy signatures of Krell shields, creating cascade failures that could disable even their largest vessels. In theory, at least, it had never been tested against an actual Krell warship. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Voss called. Dr. Isabella Monroe stepped inside, her slender frame belying the brilliant mind that had created humanity's potential salvation. At 47, her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, the result of 3 sleepless years developing the weapon that bore her name. "Captain," she greeted Voss. "I've completed the final calibrations. The device is ready." Voss gestured for her to sit. "And your confidence level, Doctor?" Monroe's expression was grim. "The simulations are promising. But the Krell have surprised us before. Their technology evolves rapidly. Will it work against Thorthol's flagship? That's the primary target. The Annihilator is their most advanced vessel," Monroe acknowledged. "But it still relies on the same fundamental shield technology. If we can get close enough." The unspoken question hung between them. How could one ship, even with superior technology, get close enough to the heart of an enemy fleet to strike its commander? "We'll find a way," Voss said with quiet determination. "We have to." The intercom sounded. "Captain to the bridge," came Chen's voice. "We've detected something unusual." Voss and Monroe exchanged glances before hurrying to the bridge. Upon arrival, Voss found her senior officers gathered around the sensor display. "Report," she ordered. "We've detected a spatial anomaly 2 light minutes ahead," explained Science Officer Dr. Liam Okafor. "It appears to be an uncharted wormhole, possibly artificial in nature." Voss studied the readings. "Krell technology. Unknown. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database." Monroe leaned closer to the display. "Captain, this could be significant. If it's not Krell in origin, it could mean there are other species resisting the Empire." Voss finished the thought. The implications were enormous. Humanity had encountered no other spacefaring civilizations before the Krell arrived. The Empire had claimed to be the galaxy's sole advanced species, with humanity merely an infestation to be cleansed. "Options," Voss asked her officers. "We could investigate," Chen suggested. "It's a deviation from our mission parameters, but if there are potential allies. Or it could be a trap," countered Tactical Officer Major Diana Reed. "The Krell are masters of deception." Voss considered for a moment. Time was critical, but so was information. "Adjust course. We'll approach with caution, minimal power signatures. Be prepared to engage emergency quantum jump if it proves hostile." As the Defiant altered course, the crew felt a flicker of something long forgotten. Hope. If they weren't alone in their fight against the Krell, perhaps humanity's chances weren't as bleak as they'd believed. The ship approached the anomaly slowly. As they drew closer, the sensors provided more detail. The wormhole's mouth was relatively small, perhaps only twice the size of the Defiant. "Analysis, Dr. Okafor," Voss prompted. "It's definitely artificial, Captain. And stable. Unusual for wormholes of this size. The exit point is approximately 17 light-years away, in what our star charts mark as empty space." "That's beyond Krell territory," Chen observed. "Beyond any mapped region." Voss made her decision. "We maintain our primary mission. Mark these coordinates for future investigation, should we survive." The wormhole might provide an escape route for remaining human colonies if the worst happens. The Defiant returned to its original course, but the discovery had shifted the mood on the bridge. The universe had just become larger, more complex, and perhaps less hopeless. 2 hours later, Lieutenant Reyes announced, "Approaching Cassiopeia Nexus, Captain. Dropping out of quantum drive in 30 seconds. Battle stations," ordered Voss. Throughout the ship, alarm klaxons sounded as crew members moved with practiced efficiency to their positions. Weapon systems came online. Shields powered up to standby levels to minimize detection, and damage control teams stood ready. "Quantum drive disengage," Reyes reported. "We've emerged at the system's edge." "Active sensors at minimum power," Voss instructed. "Passive scanning only. Let's see what we're facing before they see us." The main viewscreen displayed the Cassiopeia system, a blue-white star surrounded by 7 planets, but it was the space around the 4th planet, a gas giant, that drew everyone's attention. Hundreds of ships orbited the massive world, their formation precise and disciplined. "Magnify," Voss ordered, her voice hushed. The image zoomed in, revealing the Krell Armada in all its terrifying glory. Massive dreadnoughts, each capable of laying waste to an entire planet. Sleek cruisers that could outmaneuver any human vessel. Swarms of fighter carriers that could deploy thousands of attack craft. And at the center, the Annihilator, Admiral Xorth Hull's flagship, nearly 5 kilometers in length, its obsidian hull bristling with weapon systems. It dwarfed even the other Krell capital ships. "Count," Voss asked. 227 combat vessels, Reed reported, plus support ships and what appears to be a mobile construction platform. Total enemy strength exceeds 300 vessels. Chen whispered what everyone was thinking. "My God." Voss's expression remained impassive, but inwardly, she felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down upon her shoulders. One ship against hundreds, one desperate gamble against the architects of Earth's destruction. "They haven't detected us yet," Reed reported. "Our stealth systems are holding." "Good," Voss replied. "Now we plan our approach." She turned to her officers. "I need options. How do we get close enough to deploy the Monroe device against the flagship?" As her team began strategizing, Captain Voss took one final look at the overwhelming force arrayed against them. The impossible odds, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. And she allowed herself a small, defiant smile. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. "The battle begins. Begin recording," Captain Voss said softly. Personal log. "We faced the enemy at last. 3 years of running, of watching human worlds fall one by one. And now we stand at the precipice. The Defiant may well become humanity's tomb or its salvation. Either way, history ends here for us." She terminated the recording and turned her attention to the tactical display. For the past hour, her senior officers had been developing a strategy that might, against all odds, give them a chance to strike at Xorth Hull's flagship. The Krell maintained a standard defensive formation, Major Reed explained, pointing to the holographic projection. 3 concentric rings around the Annihilator. Their patrol patterns are predictable. They've grown complacent in their dominance. "Complacency we can use," Voss noted. "What about their sensor network?" Dr. Okafor stepped forward. "They've established a grid of autonomous sensor platforms throughout the system. However, I've identified a gap in coverage near the system's asteroid belt." He indicated a region where the massive chunks of rock created natural interference. "The Defiant's stealth systems should allow us to approach through this corridor without detection." "And once we're inside their defensive perimeter?" Voss asked. Chief Engineer Nakamura cleared his throat. "That's where my team's modifications come in, Captain. We've adapted the quantum drive to create a localized distortion field. When activated, it will briefly mask our energy signature, making us appear as nothing more than background radiation. We can sustain it for approximately 3 minutes before the system overheats." Voss considered this information. "So we approach through the asteroid field, Activate the distortion field to slip through their defensive lines, and then make a direct run at the Annihilator. Yes, Captain, Chen confirmed. It's a suicide run, but it's our only chance to get the Monroe device close enough to affect their flagship. The weight of the plan hung heavy in the air. None of them had spoken the obvious, that even if they succeeded, there would be no escape. The Defiant would be surrounded by the entire Krull fleet with no path to retreat. Very well, Voss decided. We proceed. Navigation. Set course for the asteroid field. Minimal power. Tactical. Keep weapon systems in standby mode. Dr. Monroe, I want the device ready to deploy the moment we're in range. As the crew moved to execute her orders, Voss caught Chen watching her. Her first officer approached, speaking quietly so only she could hear. Ilara, I've served with you for 6 years. I've never seen you accept a no-win scenario. Voss's lips twitched in a hint of a smile. Who said anything about accepting it? The Defiant slipped into the asteroid field, its advanced navigation systems allowing it to weave between massive rocks with precision no human pilot could match. As they moved deeper into the field, the debris grew denser, providing additional cover from Krell sensors. We're detecting increased patrol activity near our exit point, Lieutenant Zhang reported from communications. They appear to be responding to something. But I don't think it's us. Voss frowned. Can you intercept their transmissions? Yes, but the translation matrix is struggling with some technical terminology. Zhang worked his console. Something about spatial disturbances and unknown energy signatures. Dr. Okafor looked up sharply. The wormhole we detected. They must have discovered it too. This development complicated matters. Increased Krell activity meant more eyes watching, more sensors scanning. The window for their approach was narrowing. Time to exit the asteroid field, Voss asked. 17 minutes, Captain, Reyes responded. Hold position, Voss ordered. Let's see where they deploy their response forces before we commit. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Finally, the sensors showed the Krell patrol vessels moving away from their planned exit point, heading toward the system's outer boundary where they had detected the wormhole. They'd redirected 4 destroyer-class vessels, Reed confirmed. Our exit path is now guarded by only 2 patrol ships. 2 we can handle, Voss decided. Resume course, 1/4 power. Weapons prepare to target their propulsion and communication systems only. We need to neutralize them before they can alert the fleet. The Defiant moved silently through the last stretch of the asteroid field. As they approached the clear space beyond, the 2 Krell patrol ships came into view, sleek, predatory vessels with the characteristic spine design of the Empire's lighter combat craft. They've altered course, Reed warned. I think they've detected something. Nakamura, activate the distortion field, Voss ordered. Field engaged, Captain. 2 minutes 50 seconds of operational time remaining. The patrol ships hesitated, their sensors momentarily confused by the Defiant's disappearing energy signature. It was the opening Voss needed. Weapons free. Take them out. The Defiant's pulse cannons fired, brilliantly blue beams slicing through space to strike the first patrol ship's engines. Before the second could react, a spread of quantum torpedoes, another of Dr. Monroe's innovations, struck its command module, disabling it instantly. Both vessels neutralized, Reed reported. No distress signal detected. Excellent, Voss acknowledged. Full power to engines. Let's close the distance to the main fleet while we still have the advantage of surprise. The Defiant accelerated, leaving the disabled patrol ships behind. Ahead lay the Krell battle fleet, still unaware of the human vessel approaching their perimeter. Distortion field failing. Nakamura warned as they neared the outer defensive ring. 30 seconds remaining. Hold course, Voss commanded. All power to forward shields once the field collapses. The tension on the bridge was palpable. If the Krell detected them too soon, before they could penetrate deep enough into the defensive formation, the mission would fail before they could even deploy the Monroe device. Distortion field collapsed. Nakamura announced. Almost immediately, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple Krell vessels altering course. Reed called out. "We've been detected. Time to intercept," Voss demanded. "Nearest vessels will be in weapons range in 40 seconds. Voss's mind raced through calculations and options. Navigation, set course directly between those two dreadnoughts. Maximum speed. Rise looked startled. "Captain, that gap is barely wider than our ship." "Precisely. They won't expect it, and they'll hesitate to fire with their own vessels in the line of fire." It was a desperate gambit, but the Defiant responded instantly, accelerating toward the narrow gap between two massive Krell warships. The enemy vessels began to turn, trying to bring their weapons to bear without endangering each other. "They're targeting us," Reed warned. "Energy buildup detected in their main batteries." "Evasive pattern Delta," Voss ordered. "Keep them guessing." The Defiant twisted and rolled, its hull groaning under the strain of maneuvers it was never designed to perform. The first salvo of Krell energy weapons missed by meters, superheating the space around the human ship. "Return fire," Voss commanded. "Target their weapons arrays only. We need to confuse them, not destroy them." The Defiant's weapons lashed out, striking the nearest dreadnought's forward batteries. The Krell ship's response was immediate, a barrage of missiles that filled the space around them. "Point defense systems engage," Reed reported as the Defiant's close-range weapons automatically targeted the incoming missiles. Most were destroyed before they could reach the ship, but 3 broke through. The bridge rocked violently as the missiles impacted the shields. Status indicators flashed red across multiple consoles. "Shields at 67%, Chen called out. "Minor hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Damage control teams responding." "Keep going," Voss urged as they slipped between the dreadnoughts, emerging into a momentary clear space. "Distance to the second defensive ring." "Approaching now," Rise answered. "They're closing formation to block our path." Indeed, the Krell cruisers were moving to create an impenetrable wall. Behind them, more ships from the outer ring were giving chase, and ahead, the inner ring was already preparing to engage. "New plan," Voss announced. "Nakamura, how quickly can you restore the distortion field?" 10 minutes minimum, Captain. The emitters are still cooling down." "Too long. They needed something else." Voss turned to Dr. Monroe. "The quantum torpedoes, could we modify them to create a temporary blind spot in their sensor network?" Monroe considered for a moment. "Yes, a concentrated detonation could disrupt their quantum communication relays. They'd be blind for perhaps 30 seconds. "Do it," Voss ordered. "Reed, prepare a full spread of torpedoes targeted at these coordinates." She indicated a cluster of small objects orbiting just beyond the second defensive ring. The Krell sensor platforms. As Monroe and Reed worked to modify the torpedoes, the pursuing ships drew closer. Energy beams slashed past the Defiant, one grazing the port nacelle. "Port shields failing," Chen reported. "We can't take much more of this." "Torpedoes ready," Reed announced. "Fire," Voss commanded. The modified torpedoes streaked away from the Defiant, bypassing the Krell ships to strike the sensor platforms. The resulting explosion wasn't particularly dramatic visually, but its effect on the Krell fleet was immediate. Ships began firing randomly. Their coordination shattered as their central command network temporarily failed. "They're blind," Voss observed. "Full power to engines. Take us straight through their second line." The Defiant surged forward, slipping through gaps in the disorganized Krell formation. Energy weapons fired around them, but without their targeting sensors, the shots went wide. For a brief, glorious moment, it seemed they might break through unscathed. Then a lucky shot from a Krell cruiser struck the Defiant's starboard side. The ship lurched violently. Consoles exploded across the bridge, sending officers flying. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power fluctuated. "Damage report," Voss called, pulling herself back into her command chair. Chen, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, checked the systems. Starboard shields collapsed. Hull breaches on decks 2 through 5. Engineering reports the quantum drive is offline. Casualties? Voss asked, dreading the answer. Medical reports 17 confirmed dead, dozens injured. The number struck Voss like a physical blow. 17 lives, nearly 6% of their crew, gone in an instant. These weren't faceless statistics. They were people she knew, had selected personally for this mission. "Captain," John called urgently. "I'm detecting a direct transmission from the Krull flagship. They're hailing us." This was unexpected. The Krell rarely communicated with humans, considering them unworthy of dialogue. "On screen," Voss ordered. The view screen flickered, and for the first time, Captain Ilara Voss found herself face to face with Admiral Sorthal. The Krell commander's features were as alien as they were terrible. 6 obsidian eyes arranged in a circle around a central sensor organ, glistening chitinous skin, and multiple appendages that served as both arms and weapons. "Human vessel," the translator rendered Sorthal's clicking speech into English. "Your resistance is noted for its audacity, if not its wisdom. You have penetrated further into our defenses than any of your kind before. For this achievement, I will grant you the honor of surrender. Your crew will be studied rather than immediately exterminated." Voss stood straight, meeting those alien eyes without flinching. "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the HSS Defiant. We do not recognize your authority to offer terms. Earth remembers. The colonies remember. We will not surrender." Exorthal's appendages rippled in what might have been amusement. "Your species' defiance is irrational. You face extinction, regardless of your actions here today. Your homeworld is ash. Your colonies fall one by one. This single ship, whatever its technological advances, cannot change the inevitable outcome." "Perhaps," Voss acknowledged, "but we'll make sure you remember the cost of underestimating humanity." She signaled Zhang to cut the transmission. As the alien face disappeared from the screen, Voss turned to her officers. "They're stalling. They want to keep us talking while they surround us." She looked to Nakamura. "Status of the quantum drive. We can restore partial functionality in about 5 minutes, Captain, but we won't have enough power for another jump." "We don't need to jump," Voss replied. "We just need to reach the annihilator." She turned to Dr. Monroe. "The device. Operational, Captain, but we need to be within 10 kilometers of the target for maximum effectiveness." Voss studied the tactical display. The Krell ships from the second ring had recovered from the sensor disruption and were closing in. The Krell formation, a geometric precision that could be their undoing. "The Krell think in absolutes," she said slowly. "Their formations, their tactics, everything follows mathematical precision. But that makes them predictable." She pointed to the display. "Look here and here. They maintain exact distances between vessels in each defensive ring. The gaps align at regular intervals." Reed caught on immediately. "A synchronized rotation. If we time it right, we can slip through all 3 rings in a single maneuver," Voss finished. "Lieutenant Reyes, can you plot a course that will take us through these gaps precisely as they align?" Reyes studied the pattern, her fingers dancing across her console. "Yes, Captain. But the timing would have to be perfect. We'd have less than a 2-second window at each intersection. And we'd need to accelerate to maximum speed immediately before the first gap," Chen added. "The inertia would carry us through even if our engines were hit. It was their only chance." "Make it happen," Voss ordered. "Engineering, give us everything you can for one final burn. Damage control, seal all compartments, and prepare for impact. This will get rough." Throughout the ship, the crew braced for what was coming. In engineering, Nakamura and his team pushed the damaged systems beyond safe limits. In medical, Dr. Winters and her staff secured patients and prepared for more casualties. "The gaps will align in 30 seconds, Reyes announced, her voice tight with concentration. "All power to engines on my mark," Voss ordered. Weapons target any vessel that attempts to move out of formation to block our path. The seconds counted down as the Krell ships continued to close in from all sides. On the tactical display, the 3 defensive rings rotated in their precise patterns, the gaps between ships momentarily coming into alignment like the tumblers of a lock. "Mark," Voss called. The Defiant lurched forward, its damaged engines screaming in protest as they delivered a final surge of power. The ship rocketed toward the first gap, a space barely wider than the vessel itself between 2 Krell cruisers. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Reed counted down. The Defiant slipped through the first gap with meters to spare. Immediately, the Krell vessels fired, energy beams crisscrossing in the space the human ship had occupied a split second before. Second gap approaching. Reyes called out. 8 seconds. The inertia from their initial burn carried them forward, but they were slowing. The second gap looked impossibly narrow as they approached. "We're not going to make it," Chen warned. "We're too slow." "Auxiliary power to the maneuvering thrusters," Voss commanded. "Everything we've got." The ship shuddered as the last reserves of power were diverted to the thrusters. The Defiant surged forward just enough to slip through the second gap. The port nacelle scraped against a Krell destroyer, sending sparks flying as metal screamed against metal. "Hull breach on deck 6, Chen reported. "Emergency force fields holding." "Final gap in 15 seconds, Reyes announced. "We're still decelerating." Voss made a split-second decision. "Nakamura, initiate a controlled overload in the secondary power coupling. Channel the energy surge to the remaining thrusters. Captain, that could rupture the entire power grid." "Do it now." The engineering chief complied. Throughout the ship, lights flickered and died as power was diverted. The deck plating vibrated beneath their feet as the overtaxed systems neared the breaking point. And then, a massive surge as the coupling overloaded. The released energy slammed into the thrusters, propelling the Defiant forward with sudden violent force. The ship hurtled toward the final gap, directly toward the waiting Annihilator beyond. They cleared the third defensive ring just as the power grid failed completely. Emergency systems engage, providing minimal life support and controls. The Defiant drifted now, carried only by momentum, directly toward the massive Krell flagship. "Distance to target?" Voss asked, her voice surprisingly calm. 12 kilometers in closing, Reed reported. "We'll be within optimal range in 20 seconds. Behind them, the Krell fleet scrambled to respond to this unprecedented breach of their defenses. Ahead loomed the Annihilator, its weapon systems powering up to obliterate the human intruder. "Dr. Monroe," Voss said, "prepare to deploy the device." As the Defiant closed the final distance to its target, the crew braced for what would come next. They had achieved the impossible, penetrating to the heart of the Krell fleet. Now they would deliver humanity's response to the destruction of Earth. The Monroe device hummed to life, its energy signature building as it prepared to unleash its payload against the architects of humanity's near extinction. The final confrontation was at hand. Humanity's finest hour. Time seemed to slow as the Defiant drifted toward the Annihilator. On the bridge, Captain Voss watched the distance counter tick down. 11 kilometers. 10, 9. "All remaining power to forward shields," she ordered. "We need to survive long enough to deploy the device." The massive Krell flagship filled their view screen now, its obsidian hull absorbing the light of the nearby sun. Unlike the geometric precision of lesser Krell vessels, the Annihilator's design incorporated organic elements, curves, and protrusions that resembled nothing so much as a monstrous deep-sea predator. "They're targeting us," Reed warned. "Multiple weapons locks detected." "Evasive maneuvers," Voss commanded. No response from the maneuvering thrusters, Reyes reported, her fingers flying across her console. "We're operating on emergency power only. We can't evade." Chen looked to Voss. "Captain, we're a sitting target." Before Voss could respond, the space around them erupted with energy as the Annihilator fired. Massive beams of coruscating power lanced toward the Defiant, only to be intercepted by something else. "What the hell?" Reed exclaimed. On the tactical display, new signals appeared. 3 small vessels that had seemingly materialized between the Defiant and the Annihilator. The unknown ships absorbed the brunt of the Krell attack, their shields flaring brilliantly before failing. "Where did they come from?" Chen demanded. Dr. Okafor studied his readings. "The wormhole signature. It matches the anomaly we detected earlier. These ships came through it. They're hailing us," Zhang announced, surprise evident in his voice. "On screen," Voss ordered. The view screen flickered to show a bridge not unlike their own, though the technology appeared more advanced. The commander was humanoid but clearly alien, tall and slender with pale blue skin and large multifaceted eyes. "Human vessel." The alien spoke in perfect English. "I am Commander Thera of the Solarian Resistance. We've been monitoring your battle. Your courage against the Krell is impressive." Voss barely had time to process this revelation. "Commander Thera, we appreciate the assistance, but we're on a critical mission. We must reach the Krell flagship." "We understand," Thera replied. "The Krell have devastated dozens of